My name is Yanda Eskandari. I'm an Iranian interdisciplinary artist, and I'm in the second year MFA student here in UO. I won CSWS grant for my first project actually here in the US. It was about the name of the project was Between the Two Trees, and that project brought up this idea of the relationship between female bodies and nature. Getting this grant, it was like an open door for me to one area of research about female bodies and nature. And as I went into this topic, I could see so many correlations between female bodies and nature that it wasn't that much clear for me before. And because of this grant, I focus more on this idea. I've been working on different projects based on this idea since last year. And now I can see so many social, political, philosophical correlations between this idea that I had and how much I improved and got deeper in this idea that okay, I knew my body as a female body and I knew nature, but how much society and the masculine hierarchy expect we both be productive and which ways we can be productive or not.
My research looks at how informal labor markets in the Global South operate. I specifically look at how women in the informal labor communities, especially in India where I'm from, devise strategies and coping mechanisms to deal with the multiple vulnerabilities they face. I specifically employ an intersectional lens of looking at how caste, class and gender render these women multiply vulnerable. My larger questions look at how aspirations are formed, how do women envision good life, essentially within the systems of informal labor markets they're in. 80% of the Indian labor force comprises of the informal labor market, and I think a lot of the studies and work that has been done around informal labor has been essentially around devising policies or understanding different modalities of how social protection can help them. But my research tries to look at the human experience of it, and I think anthropology allows me to do that much more in depth.
So the CSWS grant last summer has helped me cover the rest of my focus group interviews. I do mixed methods ethnography, so I also do a lot of geospatial networks. I do a bits of photo voice. I do quantitative surveys, but I also do like focus groups. So I was able to cover around 60 to 70 families that I really wanted to touch base with. But also this has been a project in the making since 2020, the year which I was in India as a first year student, so that allowed me to get much more closer to what this informal labor looks like, also during pandemic times. Also thanks to CSWS for funding me that year when I was in India in my second year, trying to sort of get some foundational research done before I eventually developed my research questions.
Received the Graduate Research Award for my PhD project, which is called Strange Kinship, Women-Animal Relationships in British and French Art from the 1700s to 1900. And so it's a dissertation that looks at kind of the representation of animals in visual and material culture from that time period in those regions. And it thinks about these encounters as kind of multi-species encounters that were framed by colonial powers and kind of through like consumption, observation, and like ownership and companionship. Because my project is both so interdisciplinary and covers such a big time period and and different types of objects. So I had to do a lot of archival research that I, for a very long time, didn't actually know where I was looking. So it was a lot of trial and error, and I needed to have kind of a lot of time that I could use to do this kind of research. And so the grant was one of the sources of funding that made it possible for me to spend 2 months last summer in France, and then I went to the UK. This was the only time as an international student. Also, this was a really huge financial support for me, because otherwise I didn't have anywhere that I could turn to. My program also didn't have any kind of course release or teaching release, so my funding is tied to my teaching. So the only time that I could possibly do research was during the summer. So I was able to visit 25 different institutions, from libraries to museum archives. I spoke to curators in the Louvre, in the Sèvres porcelain manufacturing museum and archive. I went to visit Osborne House and Balmoral Castle in Scotland. I spent a lot of time working with the archives in Windsor Castle, so I really went kind of to as many different places as possible, and the research that I did in those 2 months was actually enough to then sustain me to spend a whole year writing my dissertation, which I'm now finishing up.